I would also like to welcome you very warmly to this York Residents' Festival performance of Rhymes of the Times in this beautiful Unitarian Chapel. I'd like to start by thanking you particularly for coming today of all days, because as I'm sure you're only too well aware, today is National Potato Day. These are my very own potatoes grown in my own garden. I'm very proud of these. I do not have green fingers. Ta-da! My own potatoes. So I'm really very honoured that you should have torn yourself away from your tatties to be here with us tonight. Though for all I know, some of you brought your potatoes with you, in which case they are also very welcome. All are welcome in a Unitarian chapel. Now, I don't know about you, but personally, I love potatoes in their jackets, and cucumbers in ties, collies in their Sunday best always take first prize. I like Brussels sprouts in trench coats that come down to their knees, and a stripy balaclava is a must for Calabrese. I like celery in sweatshirts, squash in welly boots, but French beans taste most délicieux in their birthday suits. Right, so tonight I am taking you through the events of 2010 with 2020, highs and lows, events aplenty. Ash from Iceland's freak eruption causes widespread flight disruption. The Pope bestows his benedictions. Psychic Paul, may he rest in peace. World Cup predictions. Cameron and Clegg announce their alliance. William and Kate, their affiance. The big society, you have a bash. Your government is strapped for cash. BP's boss, excoriated. Chilean miners, liberated. Here, the year ends with horrible weather. The coldest December on record ever. Right, so the year began, unsurprisingly, in January. Does anybody recognise this building? Do you know what country it was in? I'm sorry? Dubai. Fantastic. Yes, this is the world's tallest building, was opened in Dubai in January of last year. It's worth your knowing that I live in a bungalow. So, bungalow dweller, world's tallest building. With apologies to Alfred Lord Tennyson, here is the charge of the Height Brigade. Half a mile, half a mile, half a mile high, ride to the top and look down on Dubai. Half a mile, into the sky, the world's tallest building. The question is, why? Why? Personally, I think tall buildings might be a man thing. You know, my tall building is taller than your tall building. But I'm not entirely sure, given the current climate, I'm not entirely sure whether I'm allowed to say that without getting the sack. So maybe I just better keep that to myself and move swiftly on. Oh, no, here's to prove this is the world's tallest building, 2,625 feet high. Goodness gracious me. Right. Also in January, this is a picture, of course, of the Terry's clock on our beloved Terry's chocolate factory. That is no more. As we all know, it got bought by Kraft, and that was the end of that. And in January, Cadbury's suffered the same fate. Cadbury's was bought by Kraft. The crafty buggers have won the day. Watch out, Bourneville, is what I say. I should cocoa. Down our way, they bought up Terry's, to our dismay, shut the factory, and left the UK. So personally, I don't hold out much hope for Cadbury's in Bourneville, because they shut our Terry's factory in 2005, I think, and am I right in thinking it's been empty ever since? And did they get planning permission last year? Finally, I think it went through, so something might be happening on the Terry's site. Now, where are we? Still January, and exactly a year ago today, the 29th of January, Tony Blair appeared before the Chilcot inquiry, which was investigating the war in Iraq. And of course, he's since been back this January as well. And it put me in mind of, do you remember Churchill's injunction to jaw, is always better than to war. So Blair was called to the Chilcot inquiry to jaw about the war. Blair, he was there. Try to find out why. Might, he knows was right. War, what's it for? Blair, was it fair? Why did my son die? Pray for peace one day. Anybody recognise this chappie? It's a very patriotic man. As you'll see, he has a picture of Churchill behind him. He's so patriotic, in fact, that his tax affairs, for tax purposes, he is registered in Belize, that well-known area of Britain. Belize. Yes, this man is Lord Ashcroft, Tory party deputy chairman and the largest donor to the Tory party. He and Dave are big buddies, and the Tories used his money, the massive amounts of money he was donating to the Tory party, in marginal constituencies. So this is the heart of the matter. It's a non-dom. Oh yes, because that was the point. He at last revealed that his tax status was a non-dom, that he was domiciled in Belize for tax purposes. Okay, so it's a non-dom rom-com. Lord Ashcroft loves Dave and showers him with money from the tax that he saves. Can't buy me love, says Dave, can buy me votes. With your posh-dosh, I'll woo any voter who floats. The action moves offshore, across to Belize, where our hero's revealed as a big fiscal tease. He pledges fidelity, supports Team GB, just not quite enough to pay HMRC. Oh, we're in March already, goodness me. The time is flying. The 21st of March was World Poetry Day. Not just National Poetry Day, World Poetry Day. And to mark that, the Radio 2 Arts Show invited me and Roger McGough to go and talk poetry. And they also commissioned me to write a poem specifically for World Poetry Day. And they wanted me to include recent arts news. So I listened carefully to the arts news over the preceding weeks, and it was all to do with glitzy awards all around the world. So my poem was my commentary on that, and the winner is I don't give a toss about Hollywood Oscars. The Brits are a bit of a bore. The BAFTAs, I have to say, don't take my breath away. I've seen it all before. We're awash with awards. Folk deserve their rewards, but to me, it's a bit OTT. Sundry stars in posh frocks don't stop my clocks. Give me one-on-one intimacy. Close-up, intense, without any pretense. That's how I take my art. So roll out the red carpet, and the true winner is the poem that pierces your heart. Now, some of you may have noticed there was a subtle reference there, an homage, a nod to the poet W.H. Auden, the Four Weddings and a Funeral guy, who was born here in York, of course. I used to pass his house down in Bootham every day when I went to school. I either walked or cycled or was on the number 19 bus, and it was very inspiring to go past that house. Talking of modes of transport, does anybody recognise this gentleman? Letwin. Do you know, I don't know what Oliver Letwin looks like, so I can't even tell you whether you're close. But it isn't. It isn't. This is a former Transport Secretary. Stephen Byers. Excellent. Yes, Stephen Byers, who in March was stung in a sting, he got caught in a sting operation. Anyway, he was filmed offering his services as a lobbyist for £5,000 a day. I should be so lucky. £5,000 a day. So he described himself in this sting, he described himself as being a bit like a sort of a cab for hire. So this is Gabby Cabby. Neither a buyer's nor a seller be. Influencing government should be free, not a nice little earner for an ex-MP. That's why it's called democracy. So I don't know what happened to him afterwards. I doubt if he's had a very illustrious career since. Oh, March. Things got really exciting in March. The 26th of March, I was having lunch with my husband and noticed out of the corner of my eye on our patio a bee, the like of which I had never seen before. So I rushed and took a photograph and didn't know what it was. It wasn't a bee that I had seen before in York. And some of you may know that I keep quite a beady eye out on what's going on in my garden. So I emailed this picture to the Bumblebee Conservation Trust, who got very excited and said, "Oh, you have seen a tree bee," which is a new bee which came to Britain from France in 2001. And it was first spotted in York in 2009, but I didn't see it then. This was my first sighting, March 2010, and it was in fact the first 2010 sighting in York of this bumblebee. So it comes from France, and it was first spotted in the south of England and has made its way up north. I told Adrian about it, the gentleman who introduced me just earlier, and soon afterwards he saw one in his garden. So I thoroughly recommend, come Marchy-ishy, have a look and see if you can see the tree bumblebee in your garden. If you do see it, tell the Bumblebee Conservation Trust. They'll be very excited, and as I say, they're plotting its progress. So this is a tree bumblebee, and as I said, she comes from France. So this is Madame Honfleur. Oh la la! Look at me closely, and you will see. I am not an ordinary bumblebee. Look at me closely, and you will see. I am a bumblebee of the tree. My family is d'origine française, but now I consider myself anglaise. I am here in your jardin for the première fois, bringing my own special je ne sais quoi. I don't come to conquer, I just come to share, to pollinate vos fleurs with my Gallic flair. I think votre pays is vraiment génial. Here's to a fruitful entente cordiale. Oh, it's April, it's Easter, it's Good Friday, and this is the city, the town of Limerick in Ireland. Now, Limerick in Ireland on Good Friday is dry. In Catholic Ireland is dry, except not this year. This year, as an exception, the publicans were granted a license to open the pubs because there was a very important rugger match on that night. Now, funnily enough, the Catholic Church was not best pleased. So a news programme had the bright idea of commissioning me to write a limerick about Limerick. A limerick. Very good idea. So they commissioned me to write a limerick, and their idea was that they would then broadcast this, and it would be the starting point of a limerick competition for their audience. So they commissioned me to write the limerick, and I wrote the limerick, and they approved the limerick, and I went and recorded the limerick, and they told me what time the limerick would be broadcast, and I turned on the appliance, waiting to hear my poem, and instead I heard two extremely earnest people debating extremely earnestly the rights and, more to the point, the wrongs of serving alcohol on Good Friday. And so the editors of the programme decided it probably wasn't such a good idea following that to broadcast the limerick, or to have the limerick competition either. So nobody ever got to hear the limerick. So if any of you are of a sensitive disposition when it comes to the Catholic Church, embroiled in Ireland, as you know, in child abuse scandals at the moment, if you are not amused by limericks of that ilk, then I would advise you please just cover your ears for now, because I don't want to offend, and I'll let you know when it's time to take them off again, okay? So, this is the name of the game. The name of the game is my limerick. Hope is what Easter's about, for rugger fans and the devout. One man's conversion is another's perversion. Make mine a pint of stout. There we are. That was the limerick. It's at last had an outing. Ta-da! April, yes. Can anybody name this volcano? Oh my goodness, there's someone who can say it. Oh, give us that again. My goodness. Well, I'm very impressed. So this is the volcano that erupted in Iceland. Was anybody caught up in the flight chaos? Anybody anywhere really exotic or dramatic trips home? It was quite interesting because you discovered where all your friends were dotted around the world. Yes, so plane crazy. First they snaffled our savings, lost all our cash. Do you remember the Ice Save saga? So first they snaffled our savings, lost all our cash. Now they've clogged up our airspace with volcanic ash. Yes, Iceland is back on the world stage again. Tough luck for anyone travelling by plane. Stansted's at a standstill. Heathrow's no go. Wherever you're going, you'll have to go slow. From Schiphol to Stockholm to Paris, Charles de Gaulle, across much of Europe, there are no flights at all. And isn't it tranquil? Isn't it calm? We can hear the birds singing, bees buzzing, sweet balm for the soul, for our senses. Isn't it bliss? If only every day were like this. And although we don't have much aircraft noise where we are, I know, did you hear some people in the news who live, on flight paths, and they were saying that literally they could sit out in their garden and hadn't been able to before. But we've got lots of contrails going across the sky above us, and it really was, you could notice a difference. It was just this, it was placid even in the sky without all these contrails dashing back and forth. Anyhow, so that was the Icelandic volcano whose name is, I'm so impressed, whose name is? There we are. Oh, we're coming up to the election. The election, right, so Labour's slogan for the election was, it promised us all a future fair for all, which I thought was quite an interesting offer, a future fair for all. Roll up voters, we'll take you for a ride. White knuckle, Big Dipper, no place to hide. Candy floss and hoopla, nationwide. 5 more years of fairground fun. In May, you decide. So the election campaign got underway, and we had the first of these televised prime ministerial debates, which I really enjoyed. Normally, when I listen to politics, when I listen to the House of Commons and they're all going, it's a complete turn-off. But I was really hooked on these debates. It seemed to me to make a real change from the politics we usually get. It seemed to me it was politics for grown-ups, because there was no booing, no jeering, no catcalls, no sneering. There were just 3 committed men setting out their stalls. There was no bullying, no baying, no baiting, no braying. Just 3 intelligent men making their case. There were no sound bites, no outbursts, no put-downs, no spin. There were just 3 politicians explaining their positions. It was debate with decorum, an exchange of ideas. If this were our politics, then I'd be all ears. I don't know if you recall, Gordon Brown developed this catchphrase, I agree with Nick. Remember that? The 3 different leaders adopted quite different stances during this debate. It became performance politics. Brown, Cameron and Clegg play it earnest, indignant, concerned or phlegmatic. One hand in a pocket, little to lose. Come May the 6th, who will you choose? So, Nick Clegg was riding high in the polls, election campaign was underway, nobody knew who was going to win, and then Gordon Brown went to Rochdale. Anybody remember the name of the pensioner he happened to bump into in Rochdale? Mrs. Duffy, yes, Gillian Duffy, who may well have swung the election away from Labour. This was the gift of the gaff. Oops, I made a boo-boo. Oops, I was overheard. Next time I meet a voter, I mustn't say a word. Appalling accent, but anyhow. Yes, Gordon Brown did become a bit of a liability for the Labour Party that day. So, election came and went. We had the results. Ta-da! And nobody had an overall majority. So everybody was trying to woo this man, Nick Clegg, who had become the kingmaker. He had a nail-biting few days. I don't know if you remember, but it was a strange limbo to be in when you really didn't know which government you were going to get. As I said, so both Labour and Conservatives were trying to woo Nick Clegg, and whichever way it was going to go, it was going to be a marriage of inconvenience. Poles apart, opposites attract. Who'll woo whom into a workable pact? Negotiations, offers, guarantees between oil and water or chalk and cheese. A referendum on PR, that should do the trick. Now he's made his decision. Do you agree with Nick? Away from politics. 28th of May 2010 was when Apple launched its iPad, its first tablet touchscreen computer. Anybody got an iPad? No, right. Does anybody not know what an iPad is? Oh, there we are. Excellent. Yes, right. So, taking the tablets, there's an they launched this computer, and people actually queued. They slept overnight outside the Apple store in London in order to be the first people to buy one of these new devices. Ta-da! So there's an iPad sweeping the land. For the iPod, it's so in demand. It's high-tech, high-spec, computing in your hand, Apple sleek, IT chic for under £1,000. But if, like my mama in the front row, you're an iClod, then you won't understand the iFad that's sweeping the land. It's way too high-tech, too Star Trek. It's got out of hand. All this computing is too confusing, and you're making a stand. And very nice handwriting, my mother has too. Now, I was concerned in June. I switched on the radio and discovered that there was ethnic unrest in Osh. And I wish in no way to belittle the suffering of the good people of Osh, but my first thought on discovering this was, gosh, there's a place called Osh. I wish I knew where it was. For those of you similarly geographically challenged, Osh is in the south of Kyrgyzstan. For those of you whom that doesn't help very much at all, Kyrgyzstan is in Central Asia. So Osh, as you can see, is not a million miles from Dushanbe. But for those of you still slightly geographically challenged, that's where we're talking about. July. Now, I bet you could all find the Republic of South Africa on a map. The World Cup, the Football World Cup, went to South Africa. First time. We didn't exactly shower ourselves in glory, the England team, did we? Or did we? Did England shower itself in glory? We are the champions. So, Spain has won the Football Cup. The Vuvuzelas, toot, toot, toot. Diego Forlan, Uruguayan, won the Golden Ball. Thomas Müller, German, the Golden Boot. But make way for the true world champion, with the most coveted title of all. The 2010 Golden Tentacle has been won by the octopus, Paul. Spain lost a match, Müller missed the odd goal, Forlan's passes were sometimes too long, but throughout the entire tournament, Psychic Paul didn't put a foot wrong. Germany-Serbia, Germany-Germany, Germany-Spain, Germany-Spain. His predictions were unerringly accurate again and again and again. So England supporters, take heart. You can still hold your heads up high. Though we don't breed world champion footballers, we do breed world-class octopi. Because, as I'm sure you know, Paul the psychic octopus hatched in an aquarium in Weymouth, England. We do breed world-class octopi. Oh, we're getting back onto religion again. Now, I don't want to offend, as I said before. We're going to talk about women bishops. If this is a subject that you think is not suitable for slightly ribald poetry, then cover your ears again, okay? So this is the central hall at the university, just a few hundred metres from where I live, and that's where the General Synod was meeting in July. I realise that the weather doesn't look very July-esque on this slide, but it was quite frosty atmosphere in that hall. They were debating the consecration of women bishops. The C of E, the General Synod of the C of E, was debating the consecration of women bishops. Now, they did pass it. They passed this, but traditionalists did oppose this move. It was a very controversial decision. So, hands over ears if I'm going to offend you. Okay, one, two. Okay. So, I could offend, but I don't want to. So, tradition dictates that a chick to the rank and file clergy. I remember, yeah. So the thing I like about poetry, you see, is that you can condense something that's very, very big and complicated and amorphous, and you can condense it into something quite short, concise. You can get right down to the essence of a question. So to me, the essence of the question from the traditionalist's point of view was this. Hands over ears? Right. So, tradition dictates that a chick to the rank and file clergy must stick. Wearing mitred regalia requires the right genitalia. The clue's in the name, bishopric. Right, you can take your hands off your ears now. Right, well, that's what it seemed to be from where I was, but there we are. I'm sure I'm sorry?
The BBC accepted.
Yes, they were a bit in two minds as to whether to broadcast that or not, but they did in the end. But they had to send it up several tiers of management before they were happy to broadcast it. Right, so as you may have seen so far, I'm not a very big sports fan. There haven't been a lot of sports events in here so far. The most exciting thing about the World Cup for me was the octopus Paul. But I did get excited this year about the Tour de France. A friend of mine said, oh, you must try watching it. And I thought, oh, okay then. And it was really exciting. I mean, for a start, anybody who can cycle 3,642 kilometres, which is 2,263 miles in 3 weeks, I mean, I take my hat off to them for a start. This year, it was very exciting. The two top main contenders were Andy Schleck from Luxembourg and Alberto Contador from Spain, and they were neck and neck a lot of the time. And then this crucial incident happened in the mountains when Andy Schleck's chain came off, and it became very controversial because Contador carried on cycling past him when technically there was a lot of debate about whether he should have stopped and waited for Andy Schleck to put his chain back on, given that it was a mechanical problem. So what was the etiquette here? So all the way through the race, it was who was going to win. So day after day, I tuned in. It's this chain reaction. So it's neck and neck between Contador and Andy Schleck. A few seconds more between Andy Schleck and Contador. High in the mountains, a random mechanical problem delays Andy Schleck. What is the unwritten Tour de France law? Stop and wait. Contador. Andale, what the heck? Alberto has to beat Andy Schleck. An 8-second lead, Andy now has to claw back from the Maillot Jaune Contador. Yes, it's neck and neck between Contador and Andy Andy Schleck. Into the time trial, can we be sure the better trialist is Contador? Out on the road at the first time check, just 2 seconds separate him from Schleck. Hear the crowd cheer, hear the crowd roar for Andy Schleck and Contador. Too close to call. What do you reckon? Who'll be the victor, the Spaniard or Schleck? And here comes the victor, the winner of this year's tour. By 39 seconds, it's Contador. Except that it isn't anymore, because on Wednesday of this week, Contador was stripped of his title on the grounds that he used some banned substance. So he claimed that this banned substance was in some meat that he'd eaten, so he's got 10 days to appeal. So for the time being, Contador isn't the world champion, the champion of the Tour de France, but who knows, in a few days' time you'll know who actually did win the Tour de France. Oh, yes, matters less exciting now. This gentleman here in the hard hat, Tony Hayward, CEO of BP, because in April, BP's Deepwater Horizon rig exploded, and Tony Hayward, CEO of BP, was not thought to have handled it too well. So in July, his resignation is announced. I'm not quite sure whether he was pushed or whether he jumped. Cleaning up. He managed a slick operation in the Gulf of Mexico. Not quite slick enough, it seems, so Hayward has to go. He'll keep his massive pension when he steps down as chief exec, and to cap it all, he'll exit with a hefty severance check. Be careful where you prospect. Be careful where you drill. Pour oil on tropical waters, and we end up footing the bill. Now, in August, I was at Edinburgh. I was at the Edinburgh Fringe. It was the first time I'd ever performed at the Edinburgh Fringe, and it was a lifetime's dream come true, so it was wonderful. I performed Buzzing, which I'm going to be performing in March at the Theatre Royal, and in fact, which had its first performance here in this chapel as part of the Residence Festival. Now, so because I was at the Edinburgh Fringe, I missed the deadline for a project that was going on called Bugged, where you were supposed to overhear, take something that you'd overheard somebody say, and create a piece of writing from it. So my husband came home and told me that he had overheard a woman in a bookshop, in the cookery section, wandering around saying she had 8 pounds of plums, and she was 66 and she'd never made jam. I'm 66 and I've never made jam. So before I go on, was anybody here, were you that lady who was 66, never made jam? Because I didn't see it, because my husband reported this, so I didn't see this lady, so I took this as my starting point, but I don't know what this lady was really like, so if you were this lady, I'm sure you were nothing like this. I've smoked a joint in Amsterdam, hurled abuse at Uncle Sam, marched with the masses on the Kurfürstendamm, but here I am, 8 pounds of plums and I've never made jam. I'm 66 and I've never made jam. Often made love, never pushed a pram. Thank the Lord for the diaphragm. Pondered religion, what a sham. But I'm 66 and I've never made jam. I can spout about Marx ad nauseam, punt for miles along the cam, hold my own at a poetry slam, but I'm 66 and I've never made jam. 66, here I am. 66, have a wee dram. 66, never made jam. 66, and I don't give a damn. So I hope the lady did make some jam and that it turned out well. Where are we now? Oh, yes, now we are privileged here to be in this Unitarian Chapel, which is a place where people of all faiths and of no faith are all equally welcome and respected. The Unitarians espouse the values of freedom, reason, tolerance. They're tolerant enough to tolerate me. And I think having a place where diversity and different people's beliefs are respected and celebrated is very, very important. Unlike, this is the Reverend Terry Jones, who is a leader of a small Florida church with an anti-Islam philosophy. So his idea of commemorating 9/11 was to incite everybody to burn a copy of the Quran. It was in protest against the building of an Islamic centre near Ground Zero. And it led me to muse as follows. Rabbi, vicar and imam agree there's more to this world than we see. Each believes in one God, so isn't it odd that instead of one faith, there are three? He called off his burning a Quran day, as it happens, but only after there was a lot of outrage from many quarters. Right, so Gordon Brown, after his Duffy moment in Rochdale, went on to lose the election, didn't make the alliance with Nick Clegg, so resigned. We come to September and the Labour leadership election. The results are out on the 25th of September. Who is Labour going to have opted for? You remember the gentleman on the right is David Miliband, gentleman on the left, Ed Miliband, and we also had Ed Balls was standing, Diane Abbott, and there may have been some others I've forgotten. So we were waiting to find out who Labour voted for. Oh, what a balls up. They jumped on the Miliband wagon, but picked the wrong one. David was supposed to be the heir to the crown handed down by Brown and Blair, but their highly convoluted voting system led instead to Ed. Ooh, it was Kit Kat's birthday this year. Anybody know how old Kit Kat was? Well, I mean, Kit Kat has a birthday every year. It was a significant birthday for Kit Kat this year. Anybody know how old Kit Kat was? 70, a bit more. It was 75. 75 years of Kit Kats. Does anybody know how many Kit Kats are made every day in York? There are millions. 3 million Kit Kats are made every day at Rowntree's, at Nestlé's in York. So if ever you sort of have a day where you think, not much has happened in York today. 3 million Kit Kats were made today. Do you know how many Kit Kats are eaten every year just in the UK? It's over a billion Kit Kats. So I got to thinking, Henry VIII was a gourmand. He'd enjoyed his food. He came to York in 1541 and feasted here right royally, but he was a bit too early to sample the delights of a Kit Kat. But I did wonder, would Henry VIII have liked Kit Kat? Was he a Kit Kat kind of king? Would he have nibbled each finger in turn, or instantly scoffed the whole thing? That poem is a quegrocans. I've invented this new form of poetry. There are haikus, there are sonnets. This is a quegrocans, which is a question grown-ups can't answer. So there are various quegrocans. There's, is green the best colour for grass? Wouldn't blue be a more interesting hue? Or there's a lot to be said for red instead. Just imagine a lawn of pink dew. So I offer the form to you. Go out and write quegrocans. Oh, we're back to politics. This gentleman is... It's George Osborne. Yes, I always think he looks about sort of 16. I don't know if it's just me anyhow. This is George Osborne, the Chancellor of the Exchequer. And on the 20th of October, he delivered to the House of Commons, to the nation, the government's much anticipated, much talked about, comprehensive spending review, in which he announced the biggest cuts in public services since World War II. And I don't think there are many of us in this room who haven't yet been affected or are not likely to be affected by the consequences of these cuts. It put me in mind of Henry Reed's poem. Do you know the poem Lessons of War? That goes, today we have naming of parts. So this is the Chancellor delivering his spending review. Today we have naming of cuts. Yesterday we had speculation, and tomorrow morning we shall have what to do after firing. But today we have naming of cuts. Autumn leaves glisten like amber in all of the neighbouring gardens, and today we have naming of cuts. They call it easing the deficit. It is perfectly easy if you have an overall majority. like the arts and the police and the quangos and child benefit for high earners, which in their case they will no longer get, and the apples silent in all the gardens, and the wasps going backwards and forwards. For today we have naming of cuts. Back to something a bit more beautiful. Does anybody know what these are? They're tansy beetles, and they are unique to York. And I was commissioned in October by the World Service to write a poem about the wildlife in York. And so, of course, tansy beetles had to feature. It was an interesting poem. They wanted a poem about the wildlife in our city, to coincide with the UN Biodiversity Conference in Japan. And because this poem was being broadcast across the world, I had to write it in a very special way, because usually I like to make cultural allusions or play with words a bit. But if you're writing and broadcasting for a worldwide audience whose native language might not be English, or who might not be familiar with things that you're familiar with, then you have to write it in a special way. So first of all, I was talking about speckled woods and holly blues, but unless you know they're butterflies, then that's not really very helpful. So this is what I came up with in the end. Spring in my city, cacophonous calls of rooks building nests near ruined Roman walls. Come, follow me on a wildlife walk through the streets and the squares and secret snickleways of York. Summer in my city, sparkling emerald hues of tansy beetles only found along our River Ouse. Come, step this way, take a wildlife walk along the roads and the rivers and the railway lines of York. Autumn in my city, close by Whitma Gate, speckled sawfly larvae munch and then pupate. Mists and mellow fruitfulness, time to take a walk through the gardens and gateways and graveyards of York. Winter in my city, will the waxwings come this year, flying from the frozen north to feed on berries here? Come, wrap up warm, take a wildlife walk around the paths and the parks and the playgrounds of York, and of New York and New Delhi, and wherever you may be in the busiest of cities, wildlife wonders wander free. So go, take a walk through your urban jungle, teeming with treasures, plant, animal, and fungal. Has anybody seen any waxwings this year in York?
Yeah.
This year, where? Where do I go to see them?
I saw some on the straight, on Warmgate Straight.
On Warmgate Strait, because I saw some January 2009 on Fulford Ings. And how long ago was that you saw them? Would they still be here?
Last week.
Last week? Oh, so they might still be here. Wonderful. I adore... sorry?
I had two in the Hamptons.
Really? And where's that?
Kilburn Road, which is...
Oh, is that Fulfordy? Yes. Wonderful. Right. Is there a sort of a waxwing alert for York so that you can find out where to go and... They are... Oh, they're beautiful, beautiful birds. Now then. Oh, October. Very sad. My poem for the World Service was all about the biodiversity of our world. And the very next day after it was broadcast, our world became slightly less biodiverse with the death of Paul the octopus. Though we don't breed world champion footballers, we do breed world-class octopi. Right, November, very end of October, early November, Waitrose opens in York, just down the road from us here. So why have I got a picture here of an 18th, 19th century English clergyman, critic, philosopher and wit? Well, this 18th, 19th century English clergyman, critic, philosopher and wit is one Sidney Smith, who used to live just behind where I live in Heslington a couple of 100 years ago. Now, he wrote a recipe for salad dressing, and he wrote it in verse, and this was included in an American cookbook by Marion Harland that became the biggest selling cookbook in America at the end of the 19th century. It sold over 10 million copies, and many US cooks knew how to make salad dressing because they learnt off by heart the verse the poem that Sydney Smith wrote on how to make salad dressing. So Waitrose opens in York. I bring home the newspaper that you get, the freebie newspaper from Waitrose, and it's got all these recipes, and they look quite good, but I don't know if I'm the only person, but I start reading a recipe, and there's all these abstract instructions, and I just lose my way. I can't hold what it is I'm supposed to do. So I thought, well, I'll follow Sydney Smith's example. He wrote this recipe in verse, so I will do the same thing. So this was a recipe for tortilla, so I wrote it in verse to try and help me understand it a bit better. From the land of sangria comes the tasty tortilla of tatties and tatties. See, tatties. National Potato Day, getting tatties in again. There's this leitmotif running through this whole show. It's just so sophisticated. Right, so from the land of sangria comes the tasty tortilla of tatties and eggs it's created. Our version is anglicised, leeks instead of onions fried over plus Cheshire that's grated. Boil your tatties till tender, fry leeks and then spender, few mins beating eggs, okay? Add your cheese and then pour on the veg, fry some more, wham under the grill and ha, ole! So now all I need to do is to persuade Delia or Jamie or Nigella to convert some of their recipes into verse for their next book, and it'll boost their sales, no end. Yes. This book, Ship of Fools. I can't recommend it highly enough. It is the funniest book I have read, definitely all of last year, if not for a long, long time. Well, it would be the funniest book I have read in a long time if it weren't for the fact that it's all true. It's about, well, as you can see, how stupidity and corruption sank the Celtic tiger. I was in Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, about 5 years ago, and the money sloshing around the place. I'd never been anywhere with so many big new houses and big new cars and big new roads in the back of beyond and big swanky shopping malls in the middle of nowhere. There was just so much money sloshing around the place. But it didn't last. All imploded. And on the 21st of November, Ireland, the Celtic tiger economy of the noughties, was bailed out by the EU to the tune of €90 billion. So this is, with apologies to William Blake, the tiger. Celtic tiger, not so bright, felled by rampant property blight. Brussels' banking arm will try to tame thy wild economy. What the Egypts, what the crooks who borrowed big and cooked the books, financial regulation iffy, dodgy dealings by the Liffey. Celtic tiger, piteous plight, lost your economic might, your suffering people asking why you led them back to poverty. December now, you remember this young man, Nick Clegg, who promised the nation that they would vote against any increase in tuition fees. In fact, I think they wanted to abolish student tuition fees altogether, is that right? Then they came into power, and hey presto, 9th of December, coalition government votes in favour of raising student tuition fees to £9,000 a year. Didn't go down too well. There once was a young man named Clegg who found he hadn't a leg to stand on fees. Nevertheless, he ignored student fees and now hobbles about on a peg. I think it has seriously damaged Nick Clegg and the Lib Dems as a result of that. Now, it's your choice at this point. I do have a poem about the cold, the snow, the blizzards, the burst pipes, the flu that was December. So do you want to live through all of that again? Okay, brace yourselves. This is the joy of Christmas. When the weather's at its worst, ground is frozen, pipes have burst, days are short, you're feeling blue, going down with awful flu, snow is falling, snow on snow, a Christmas shopping you must go. Frantic present-buying frenzy, fellow shoppers far from friendly. Everything is made in China, gadgets, handbags, fake designer. Find the tat the kids demanded, lug it back home single-handed. Hope it brings some Christmas cheer, he'll be paying for it all next year. Back at work a week to go, snow still falling, snow on snow. A night out at the office does nothing for your worsening flu. Cards all sent, presents wrapped, noses streaming, lips are chapped. Office secret Santa's gift demonstrates a flair for thrift. Car won't start, battery's flat. Try to walk, slip and splat. Snow is falling, ho, ho, ho. To pick up Grandma, you must go. Fingers freezing, toes all numb. You and Grandma very glum. Trying not to pick a fight, stuck in blizzard overnight. Stuff the turkey, peel the sprouts in between long coughing bouts. Pull your cracker, read the motto, watch out, Grandma's getting blotto. Boxing Day, yet more snow, internal fuse about to blow. Turkey sarnies, turkey curry. Look outside, another flurry. Kids are bored, toys all broken. Oh, to use your day spa token. -12, stuck inside, harbouring thoughts of granny side. Snow now 2 foot deep outdoors. Grandma's with you till it thaws. Kids sent out despite the cold to clear the drive. Do as you're told. Running low on food and drink. Now the telly's on the blink. Postman makes it through the snow with your visa bill. Oh no. New Year's Eve. Big surprise. Can't believe your bleary eyes. Snow is melting. Gran's unwell. Looks like flu. Bloody hell. Had enough. You're emigrating. No more frozen celebrating. Winter Christmas, mega blunder. Next Noel, you'll be down under. Did warn you it was depressing. Anyhow, but down under, it then transpired, there's me thinking the place to be in December is down under, and yet they had these terrible, terrible floods. So basically, terrible weather here, terrible weather down under. And finally, Happy New Year! January 2011. Has anybody seen the YouTube sensation of the year? Over 1 billion people, apparently, 1 billion, that would be good going even for YouTube. Over 1 million people have so far viewed this YouTube video. It was a lady in Pennsylvania in a shopping mall. For those of you, if there's anybody here who hasn't seen this video, a lady in a shopping mall in Pennsylvania was coming out of a shop and was texting on her mobile phone and didn't see that there was a little wall and a fountain in front of her. So she trips over the wall and falls headlong into the fountain. I can tell you as a fact that this woman had not taken notice of my poem, my cautionary tale, which would have prevented this personal injury and global humiliation. So I'd like to finish with some health and safety advice to prevent you from suffering the same calamity. This is a cautionary tale. This is Henry Sloane, who texted on his mobile phone and was early cut off in dreadful agonies. The chief defect of Henry Sloane was texting on his mobile phone. His mother, the recipient of all his texts, was impotent to staunch the flow of mangled words that issued from his thumb in herds. He texted morning, noon and night. She couldn't see an end in sight. He texted her before she woke. He texted, unlike normal folk, to let her know he was awake. From across the hall, for heaven's sake. He texted often, if you please, to say he was about to sneeze. He texted her when he got home. Why not the doorbell? Why the phone? From texting he would not desist. It nearly drove Mum round the twist. He texted her, but would not speak. From lack of use, his voice grew weak. And friends, this texting was not cheap. The monthly bill made Mother weep. So she sought a cure for his disease from an establishment that charged high fees. Yes, his mother thought that boarding school would solve the problem. What a fool. Texting mater from the dorm is, it transpires, quite the norm. And though it's frowned upon in prep, Henry soon learned to sidestep this rule and also found in class ways to text his mum, alas. Driven nearly to the brink, his mother, sensibly, I think, removed him from there without pomp and sent him to the local comp, where texting, of course, is also rife. For teens, it is a fact of life and death, I am afraid to say. For as dear Henry made his way from school last Thursday afternoon, texting that he'd be home soon, head bent over keypad he, lost in mobile reverie, didn't notice what he oughta, which led to his untimely slaughter. The gory details I shall abjure, suffice to say, he is no more. A life cut short, a text unsent, the reason why is evident. Addiction to technology reduces life expectancy. This fact, I feel, is worth remembering, so you all avoid a vile dismembering. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you good night.